Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Dwight on the line. Dwight, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Michael. How are you doing on this? Well, I don't know about you, but it's a beautiful day where I am. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's beautiful and sunny. No complaints. Get real vitamin D today. That's always a good thing. So, although, I should probably put something on top of,
Me too.
a hat or SPF something.
I was thinking a tinfoil hat would be good with all the stuff that's going on in the world.
Yeah, you know what? That may, and a lot of people before would probably look at us like, what are you doing? Now I don't think they would even give us a second look. They're like, I get it. But no, it's good stuff. So why don't you share a little bit about you for those that aren't familiar with your awesome work, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. How far do you want me to go back? Do you want me to go back to, birth or?
Whatever's applicable or whatever you're feeling today. How's that?
What am I feeling? What do I want to share about my life? Well, in the past, I guess, is that still present? Single dad of 5 kids, 4 daughters and a son. They're all adults now. I have 5 grandkids. I've been in the financial services, lifestyle, coaching business now. This is going on to my 23rd year. Yeah, I basically got into finance to make a difference. Prior to this, I owned an IT consulting firm, dealt with staff, dealt with computer store, had all that stuff, was always on the go. I was a person that literally, no word of a lie, God is my witness, I'd go 4 or 5 days without sleep. I was so driven to make my business successful. I'd stay up without sleep, literally grab a fresh shirt and go off to work. Burn myself out. Didn't have my finances necessarily in control, even though I was a 6-figure earner. Had what I wanted. I at least thought I was doing well in life. Yet I didn't have a lot of time. Because what do we do to get money? We have to trade something. We trade time mostly, is what our commodity is as a human being. And I worked my butt off, I guess to be the perfect word, took me into health issues. And from those health issues, had a friend reach out and said, you make good money, but you can't continue to stay on this path. And I had already heard that won't get into what the medical condition was, from a couple doctors that I needed to quit the IT industry. The stress was going to kill me, even though I was very good at what I did. I had a good friend reach out to me, tell me you're in a financial wreck. He says, I know you have you've got money to spend every month, but really, he says, you're not getting ahead. You're not living a purposeful, intentful life. Those are my words, not necessarily his. And asked me if I wanted to get into the finance industry and if I really wanted to make a difference in people's lives, but first and foremost, my own. Right? He was very blunt with me. I've known this man now 37 years, 36, 37 years, somewhere around there. And he's been a mentor of mine for a few different career shifts, actually. He actually encouraged me to get into the electronics industry, which got me into IT. Then he encouraged me to get into finance. He's always one of these people that you have in your life that is changing and evolving constantly. And he wants everybody in his circle to do the same. And I got into the finance sector because of him, fired my trainer right away, keep it short, why did I really get into the finance industry? What did I really want to do for people? Did I want to be a transactional person or a relationship person? Did I want to be somebody that is understood? Because I didn't necessarily get listened to by the people that I was trying to get to help me in regards to money and understanding the rules of the money game. And from that moment on, I fired my trainer in 6 weeks in, and I started going from office to office because I live in a city where there's lots of financial people that I could talk to and I could pick their brains. They all had their own little brokerages within this giant office that we all rented offices in. And I started asking questions, started making phone calls to product providers, anybody that would give me a chance to buy them a coffee or meet up, just to have a conversation about the rules of the money game, their version of it, obviously, to come to a consensus that I wanted to be a relationship builder. I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And the only way I was going to do that was to start working on me holistically. What did I need help with? Well, I didn't know my inflows and outflows of money. I didn't understand the basics of investments and how they function. And why was it so important to goal set? Like, what's this goal setting stuff? I had heard about it over the years. I'd read books about it, but never really applied it. Well, I figured all that out and I become one of the top people in the top 10 for North America in a very short period of time. Went from making nothing, thought that I was going to, have to go and jingle a cup on the corner for change because life was so tough as I was trying to transition from IT to finance. Well, guess what? I figured it out. I figured out that people want to be listened to. They want to be heard. They don't want to be just talked about numbers because numbers are numbers. They want to be understood and they want to have things applied to their lives that matter to them, not matter to me. The end result is I'm supposed to be a vessel of knowledge and support, help them figure out what they want short term, long term. How can they get there? Oh, they're in debt. What can we do to get you out of debt? And all the processes that I developed over the last 22 years, going into the 23rd, as I mentioned, make a difference in people's lives, to live a life that's intentful and purposeful. And then, from there, I've developed my Give a Heck brand to showcase the fact that you can give a heck about your life. You can live purposefully. Created my own podcast, as you know, and wrote a best-selling book. And there's details, obviously, all in between. But that's basically how I got into this industry, as I wanted to live a more purposeful life. Because, again, single dad, I ended up getting full-time custody of my kids. And I needed to shift my perspective of life. Was it all about money? What were my core values? What did I really want to achieve in life? It taught me to have to think more than being reactive. And for those listening, sometimes we just react and then we think after the fact, and the consequences can be dire, right? So I had to develop a critical thinking mindset to think and pause before reacting. It doesn't mean I can't react quickly. I just learned to mentally go through a process that would protect myself first and foremost, because I have to be healthy and happy in order to support others. And then obviously at that state, I can support my kids, my clients, and my faith, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, there's so much there. And first thing that came to mind just a second ago was the power of the pause. And worked in healthcare for a long time, and healthcare is a reactionary entity. Prevention, yeah, we use that word, but no one follows it. It's all reaction. I have a sore throat. Okay, what do you got to do? Well, maybe figure out how you got a sore throat in the first place and make some adjustments so you don't get one. But we don't teach that. And the pause is so important because it allows you to deal with whatever information or situation that you're facing, but also, to turn on the boundaries, because too often, and going back to your IT days when you were pulling the all day, all night shifts back to back to back to back to back, you obviously, you didn't have the boundaries to make sure that you got rest. You were driven by being successful. And time again, when I see people burn out, you experienced it, of course. What burns you out, or the reason why you burned out, is because you elected to do all of these things. And on paper, those things that you did, the working, growing the business, getting better at it, running a store, all that stuff. On paper, you look at those things like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to do. But the problem is there's only so many hours in a day, and when you're trying to grow a business, when you are the CEO, the janitor, and everything in between, yeah, it gets to the point where you are literally doing everything. We see that all the time with new entrepreneurs that are just starting their businesses. They're just doing so much. And again, a lot of it is, yeah, those are things that makes sense. Those are good things to do, but you're one of one. And on top of, being a parent to 5 kids that have 5 different, more like 50 different needs, because they all, I had 3 and I'm like 5. I'm like, I need a nap just thinking about that. But it's definitely a labor of love, because, being a parent is is awesome. It's something that I,
Full-time job.
yeah, oh yeah, mine are all grown up now. It's like, and I look and I go, how in the world are you almost this age? And of course, my original career was accounting, so I can still kind of do math. And like, okay, that's how she's that old. Okay, that makes sense. But still, like, how? But ultimately, again, it boils down to when you had that conversation with your mentor. And the good mentors, in my own personal opinion, are the ones that'll kick you in the ass a little bit and tell you what you may not want to hear, but what you need to hear. And when you have somebody like that in your life, cherish them, because they're doing it usually from a place of they see something in you, they know what your potential is, they know where you're at right now, and they're like, let's kick you over into this lane and have you try this. And I'm not shocked that you were successful when you made that switch. That gap between, okay, I'm leaving the IT 6 figures to starting off a brand new career, and there isn't much of a safety net or no net at all. You're like, and everybody's going, hey, Dad, I need this for this. I need this for this. I need this for this. And you have those pressures on top of just trying to figure out, okay, how do I help people with their financial choices and help them navigate through some things. And I'm thankful that you took the approach of you're there to help. That was the first thing. Yeah, of course you need the revenue. That's the currency of how we do things. But your goal, give a heck. I mean, that's not accidental. It's cool you got that last name too, because it certainly aligns with it. But you did. You cared about people from the get-go, even with your IT. I know you cared about people. You want to make sure that they had the right IT equipment, or all their IT needs were being addressed. That's why you were successful at that. But unfortunately, it was, and we see this a lot. And you mentioned it a moment ago. You were really, really, really good at it, but unfortunately, it wasn't the right thing for you. And I see that a lot with people. They're really good at something, but that's not the right place for you, because you're going to end up, like your mentor said, you're going to kill yourself if at this pace. And that's not going to do anybody any good. So you make that segue over to finance, and all of a sudden you start getting successful and become top number one, all that good stuff. And what's beautiful about that is because you took the approach of people want to be heard. Yeah, they don't want to be talked to. And we've all been in those meetings, whether we're getting advice on something or buying a car or doing something at the bank, whatever. When you find somebody that will actually take a moment and go, all right, what's your goal on this? What are some of the things you want to do with this? What is there anything you don't understand? Because we know this, money skills aren't necessarily taught in school unless you intentionally seek it out. It's not part of the curriculum, unfortunately, in many cases, or at least not in what I've seen recently. When we were in school, I remember there was some finance classes and things like that. But again, I was in the accounting path, so I don't know if people that were in the arts or other curriculums, if there was a finance component as far as their classes or not. I don't know. I don't remember that. But at the end of the day, showing you cared, and this goes, and people are listening or watching this, when you care and you listen and you create this element, allowing that person to feel like they belong in the conversation, that's where magic happens. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Dwight.
Well, yeah, the magic is the fact that you're addressing, and this is something that somebody taught me a long time ago. We talk about monsters, we watch shows, we watch things that other people are affected by, these monsters in their lives. They're money monsters, monsters of their childhood growing up, maybe some abuse, maybe some neglect, but nobody ever really knows how to deal with it, because you talked about the fact they don't teach anything in schools. There is some curriculums now that they've been trying to implement in the US and Canada that I've covered in the past. Is it enough? Not really. Need to start at younger ages and do things differently, but that's just my opinion. But at the end of the day, when you're sitting with somebody, they don't understand their monsters or the things that have held them back in life, both in their personal and their financial life, even their emotional life, because they compartmentalize it and hide it. Maybe there's problems at home when they're younger. They're afraid to speak up because it causes a fight. They start seeing patterns of behavior, so they hide inside their mindset. And as they grow, that gets worse. So whatever caused that issue, whether it was addiction issues, maybe there was abuse issues from that parent to that parent when they were a kid and it's passed on. Maybe there's money pressures and there's not love in the house. There can be so many different things what leads up to them needing to be heard and them not even realizing it, Michael. Sometimes people don't realize they need to be heard, that they have a voice to speak their mind. And I see it especially with couples. When I sit down on a goal set with them, I'll say, well, in order for us to start this conversation, which is vital to us to create a lifestyle and a financial roadmap for you that you can follow, we need some, clarity. Here's your goal, here's yours. Well, they try looking at one another. What are you putting? Or they question one another. Why'd you put that? And it starts off with a little bit of animosity. Well, of course, because they think they know one another when they find out with a simple goal sheet with 10 to 15 choices on it that they don't know one another, that they need to be more heard and open. So initially I become that person that's listening to them, trying to build a rapport with both of them, but also trying to make it so that they realize communication is key to success, not just in finance and everything. So I do a lot of lifestyle coaching in regards to that, and I am compassionate and I listen. I tell stories. I become a great storyteller to help people understand. And I might tell them a story of you as a client, never identifying you, who you are, but your circumstances and how we were able to change, how it effectively changed you and made a difference. And I always try to tie it back to me. It made a difference in my life when I did this for this person, or they brought something to the table that just proved to me I can still grow. And what do I mean by that? Well, Michael's telling me some stuff that it hit home. Maybe I had something that was still a little bit buried, that it opened it up. Maybe I wasn't honest with myself. And you develop that rapport, that chemistry, that communication with somebody, and then you start educating about the rules of the money game and their choices and their options and how to budget. And I help people. That's something that is lacking. And I wish every client of mine would allow me to do it with them, but they don't all, because I go into a very holistic approach of budgeting. Do you understand the difference between needs and wants? Why would you say that that is a want? And sometimes you'll start hearing stories of why it's a want. And it's because they're rooted in it can be in the past always, usually, right? And it's just having communication. People want to be heard. They want to have actually pen to paper, and I jot out things. I draw little diagrams. I talk to them about economics and supply and demand. Obviously within reason. It's just like when we teach our children, Michael. You can understand this. When you taught your children, it's age appropriate how we teach. Well, with these individuals and other adults, it's still age appropriate of how old their thought process is when it comes to money. I watch their body language. I listen for tonality to see, are they fooling themselves still with what they're telling me? Now, am I going to catch that quick enough? And how can I be compassionate enough to bring it up to not throw gasoline on a fire, but slowly peel the Band-Aid off so we can see if and help them start to, maybe our wound needed a little bit of treatment, some fresh air, some, airing out the laundry so that we can get through this, right? If any of this is making sense. And so that's what I do. It's very holistic. It's very communication based. I won't even take clients on anymore that want to just press hard 3 copies like you and I are familiar with in the days before, where you wanted to make multiple copies. You pushed hard and tore off, and here's your copy, right? I didn't want that. They didn't want that. And it's just giving them an experience they've never had before. Because why? I never had it. So I had to create it the way I thought best, and I still think that my practice is going to evolve until the day I quit doing it.
Well, again, it speaks volumes to the character, but you just mentioned something which I've seen a lot in the really successful people in the world. And definition of success is, individual. Some people view success in having a lot of things. Some people view success as being able to spend Thursday afternoons at their favorite coffee shop around the corner because they have the flexibility in their schedule to be able to do that. But you basically mentioned I give and help people and provide them that access to what they need based on what they've shared with me because I couldn't get that when I was seeking it. And that's a big thing to focus on because I see too often, and I'm sure you see it too, and with people you work with, is I've never got this. And then they kind of grab onto the victim flag and they hold it. And it's like, let's peel back from that. Can I borrow that flag for a minute? I'm not throwing it out. I'm just going to set it over here. It's right here. Don't worry. It's not going anywhere. It's right there. But kind of unpack what they've experienced in life. Typically, like you mentioned a few times, it's a past trauma or past experience that has conditioned them in their thoughts and beliefs and habits that, this is how it has to be, or I can't do that because of XYZ. And quoting Henry Ford, if you say you're right or you're wrong, you're correct, based on what you feel. But the reality of it is your situation is your situation at current moment. What would you like it to be? In an ideal thing, what would your finances look like if things were ideal? And what that does is it at least starts getting them to think, because a lot of times they don't think about it, not to that detail. It's like, what does that look like? What is, having whatever they feel they want? What does that do for you? What does that do for you as far as your work, where you live, what you have, investment opportunities, you name it. There's so many different angles you can take. But the work that you do is you help them. Quite frankly, you provide this safe space for these people where they have not felt safe before. And they can open up, quote unquote, open up the books. This is the reality of it. There's no judgment here. This is okay. It's a number thing. Okay. Yeah. Your expenses are this, your credit card debt's this, you got this. This is how much is quote unquote left over if you actually had implemented a budget. Okay. Now how do we address that? Like anything, it's step by step implementing things, looking for opportunities to improve where you're at. It's like a map, or quoting Steve Jobs, what's the end result, where you are, work backwards. Well, you can work forwards too, but working backwards was something that helped him in Apple quite a bit. And other organizations have done the same thing. It's like, okay, that's where we need to get. Where are we now? Okay, let's reverse engineer this to figure out what it is. And approaching it from, with the ingredients of some hope, some reality, but removing the self-judgment. And that is really hard because finances, this, I know this, and I know a lot of people watching and listening know this as well, is one of those things that can really, really eat at us if we're struggling financially or in over our heads on things, because we feel like, I screwed up, I did this wrong and all of that. And like, that's not going to help. Okay. Yes, she made some choices, maybe not the greatest, maybe at the time they were. Like, I had an interview earlier today, somebody, ironically, and they were talking about values, which you had mentioned early on in the conversation. And he did some work with somebody and he said, well, I made a decision to get married. And then the marriage didn't work out, and I made a decision to get divorced. Was it a bad decision to get married? And their answer was no. At the time that you got married, that was the right decision with all the ingredients. The ingredients changed. Then it was the right decision to get divorced. And so a lot of people think, I should have never got married. It's like, again, you start, self-doubting and judging yourself on some things. And that's how a lot of people get into financial difficulties. They just, I'll get through this. And they just keep going on and think they're going to be vulnerable. And next thing you know, they're struggling. Or economic downturns. Your client that has been paying you for years all of a sudden passes, or they sell their business and they already got somebody else that they work with. And so all of a sudden you're like, now what? Well, that's called life. It's going to happen, but the more prepared you are and aware of things. And that's why it's so important to work with people like yourself, because it's not all just, okay, gravy and, beautiful skies and sunny days. Sometimes there's clouds and sometimes there's some really nasty storms that come at us. What do we do to be able to navigate through them? So when it's done, we can take stock and continue on our path.
One of the things too, though, you talk about when we communicate with people, we need to communicate with them at the level they're at. And somebody taught me this probably 30 years ago. I think it was the same mentor. Talk to people at 10% above their level in energy, because in order to command a conversation or incite confidence, you talk a little bit louder than people, maybe a little bit, your cadence is a little bit more, and you have your body language in a compassionate style. And how do I explain that? Well, it's something you got to practice. People can tell your voice ties to your body and everything that you are as a person, and just listening to people to give them comfort, to make them understand you get where they're at. It's okay to, like you said, you got a tremendous amount of debt, and you can beat yourself up about it. So many people dwell on things way too long because they're never taught how to snap out of it, to have that mindset where they understand, I'm doing it to myself again. Stop that. I am worthy. I am willing to change. It takes one step at a time. Yeah, it's painful. Now, do I have people in my corner, not just me as a professional or you as a professional? Do I have people in my corner that are professionals that are going to deal with me in the process of speed that I need to do? Like, the speed of things that I need to take and process, but also be gentle enough, as we talked about, to push, right? To push and know that boundary, and then be confident to say, oh, John, Sally, Michael, Jim, whoever, I can see that you're a little bit irritated. Did we go too far? Did I say something that hit a soft spot? Because I'm aware, I'm looking at them, I'm hearing them. And then you want to acknowledge that, not just, oh, let's go on to the next thing. And that's what a lot of professionals are. They're very matter of fact, here's a list. Let's go through all this stuff. Let's help these people do this. Yet these people are hurting and they're easily manipulated, because people in an emotional state, wouldn't you agree, are easier to manipulate. Yet if they're in a positive emotional state and they're dealing with somebody that's confident with some morals and some core values that are about helping others, they won't take advantage of that vulnerability. They'll use it as a stepping stone to help them release what's that up there that's holding them back, so that they can get it down on paper. First and foremost, professionals don't just sit there and start writing notes and listen. Just lean forward, leave your pen and paper, just communicate. People, again, I'm going to keep on saying it a million times because I was that person. I wanted to be heard by all professionals: doctors, dentists, lawyers, school teachers, right? Going to deal with them for my kids, soccer coach, dance coaches, the list goes on. I hope that makes sense. We just need to really, at the end of the day, I don't care what you do as a profession. If you become a people person, you can become somebody that shows that your intent of life is purpose, and you want to help people do the same. People are going to be drawn to you. And guess what? You're going to be drawn to yourself. You're going to start liking yourself more too.
Yeah, and that's the key. It's like, you'll never spend any more time with anybody else on this planet than yourself. So figure out what you need to do to really love yourself. And we're not diminishing, anything that's happened in your life. It's happened. Actually was listening to an audio segment earlier today. It was talking about blessings and how to bless basically, the situation, the party or parties or situation that caused that situation, and also bless yourself as a witness to those things. Now you're like, wait a minute, you're blessing the cause of this problem. And it's a way to release some things. And I think a lot of people need to release some of the challenges that they've had in their lives. I'm not saying you're throwing it away or saying it didn't happen. That's not a head in the sand type of thing. It's a perspective thing. It's like, it happened. That's the reality of it. But for you to move forward on things and maybe adjust how you deal with money or other situations. It could be relationships. It could be how you engage others at work. It could be how you greet people when you're ordering food or at the grocery store. There's all kinds of different things where collectively as humans, there's a lot of room for improvement. But again, that's the beauty of humanity, is we can improve. And I hope that we all choose to do so. So, Dwight, I've loved this conversation. Could talk to you for hours on this. So where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Best place to go is one-stop shop. Just go to my website, giveaheck.com. That's www for the people. Just put in giveaheck.com. It'll come up. It's a one-stop shop. Talks about my book, what I do for people, financial education, for coaching. I have a blog on there, media blog, where articles are posted and stuff that you can read as well. And there's information about my podcast, Give a Heck, which I was blessed to have you on as a guest. But yeah, and they can book a video call too. No cost, no obligation. Just have a conversation with me and see how I can help you. You don't have to live in my country for me to help you in learning the processes and goal setting and implementation and stuff you'll have to do locally if it requires a product or service. But the service I provide is a process of understanding and putting together, goals for you and helping you understand SMART principles, which we won't get into today, or it's a process of doing goal setting and just helping them understand that, yes, you made those mistakes. Here's the budget. Here's your goals. Now, what baby steps do we need to take? And are you willing to take them with me? But you have to want it more than I do, because I can be a vessel of knowledge and understanding and direction. But at the end of the day, your purpose and intent needs to be sincere to yourself. So you're going to do it. So you're going to open up to me and say, oops, I made a mistake this month. Oops, I need to do this because I made this other bad choice. Please don't judge me that I have to take some money out of the markets, or please don't judge me because I have to put a stall on monthly payments right now for doing this or that, right? Just be a good person to others.
Yeah, that's words to live by. So I'll definitely have all that in the show notes. So, Dwight, thank you for being you. The world needs more people like you. So I really appreciate your time today. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.